Hi, this is Rachel Calvert, and thanks so much for making the time out of your day for this seminar, which is entitled Self-Care, Helping Your Career and Your Parenting. Just a little background on me is that I am a licensed social worker who has worked predominantly with men and women all around the perinatal stages, including infertility, pregnancy, and then postpartum. And how I kind of came doing these seminars is that I would often see parents come in to my private practice in Boston and talk about all the anxiety that they were having returning to work or even just being at work with all the kind of expectations that they had for themselves, also all their obligations. And that anxiety was really causing a lot of stress and issues both in the workplace and family. And so the idea was, why don't I come to the workplace and offer some of these solutions and at least bring up some ideas to help you and also start you thinking on how do you manage this work-life balance, which we're all struggling to do these days. So I invite you to look at these images that they're about to go on your screen. And I put these up there because I think this is what we always think of when we think of self-care, that we are going to have to take this beautiful bubble bath, which has someone who spent the time to not only have fresh flowers and beautiful towels that are laundered and ready to go, and also the candles, but that this is something that this is what self-care would look like. Or you have to take yourself to some gorgeous location where you can zen out. And we know, while these look beautiful, and there's no denying that this would be lovely, we know that this isn't your everyday self-care. And that actually, when we call this self-care, we're not doing ourselves any favors. So how about these images? Would you consider these images to be self-care too? So take out, that would mean ordering in, maybe not making a full course dinner sometimes, allowing yourself to take food out. The guy relaxing, looking out the window, maybe he's doing nothing. I mean, maybe he is just literally just staring into space. Could that be seen as self-care? The woman below is saying no. Is that self-care? And my answer in my presentation today is that, we all know about deep breathing and meditation and how all these things are good for you. And I'm not saying that they're not, they're excellent. But there are also smaller ways that you can make changes in your life that will help you take care of yourself, making you more present at work and also more present at home, which is what we all want to be, is that we want to be able to do our best in each setting. So, kind of just reiterating what I said, true self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from. So if you are holding on to dear life just to get to that weekend vacation in the sun, I will say that while that weekend vacation in the sun I hope is an awesome time, that's not the best coping mechanism. That we need to make our day-to-day feel okay. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but it does have to feel okay. Or what are we doing all this running around for? So what that means is that often we have to look at things that maybe we don't want to exactly look at. Self-care, true self-care, right, is about making changes, sometimes big, sometimes small, but making changes to what you're doing now. And for everyone, to different degrees, change is hard, but sometimes it's really necessary. So before we get into more of self-care basics and all that, kind of want to talk about what's changed. How did we get here? And I think a statistic that's really important to look at is that the employment rate of working mothers increased from around 32% in 1976 to almost 70% in 2015. And what that means is, obvious what it means, but just to kind of think about the impact that it might have on your life is that it means that there are two working parents in the family, if that is even so. There's sometimes just one working parent, a single parent. And that means that childcare has to be figured out. Housework has to be figured out. There is no one kind of whose full-time job is tending for the house, and everyone is sharing in responsibility. But it also means even though there's more money coming in, there's more money going out because childcare is very expensive, especially for younger ages, as well as getting the help that you need when you have working as a working parent. There's also still a large gender gap in time spent with children. Mothers spend twice as much time as fathers do, and that is changing. We see that fathers are really increasing how much time they are spending, and that is a cultural shift, and it is one that is I think, very helpful to everyone in the family. But the reality is, and I think there was a New York Times that I always forget the title of it, but they talked about how while men are sharing in responsibilities, a lot of times one parent, and it doesn't have to be one gender over the other, but one parent takes on the responsibility of the mental tasks of scheduling, planning, and organizing, and how many hours that takes on. And then again, about housework, that has changed too. Fathers are spending more time doing housework, which is great, from an average about 4 hours to about 10 hours since 1965, and mothers are doing less. We could say, oh, that means it's all equaling out. I think we all know, probably by looking at our own houses, that means that housework is really not being done that much, or it is a real burden sometimes to feel like you've got it under control. We're always playing catch up. We're always figuring out what do we need to do to make life feel a little bit less chaotic. So there have been a lot of changes in how our families have worked, and yet a lot of these changes kind of, there isn't a lot of thought about what implications these changes have. They are maybe for the good, but what toll do they take? The other thing that's really changed is that this culture of parenting perfectly. We are very into doing it all, and doing it all with a smile and effortlessly. We should be able to. So here you're going to hear me say a lot of the shoulds. We should be able to do this. Everybody else does. Why shouldn't I? And that brings me to social media. Social media is a real, it takes up a lot of space in people's heads, more than they even imagine, because we often only see the picture-ready moments. And what that does is that actually makes us sometimes feel worse about maybe how our life is going. It also isolates you, because if, let's say, you don't have any picture-perfect moments right now, how that makes you feel about sharing or leaning on others when you think everybody else's life is going well. There's also this culture, and you will hear this through generations, where our generation, or this generation, definitely believes that if you put your needs as a parent over your child, you're doing something wrong. That we should be there for our kids 110%, and if we're not, we should be feeling guilty about it. Often, also, we are living far away from families, and we don't have the support. We weren't supposed to be doing this in isolation, and yet so many times we are, just because of jobs taking us to different places, and people having to travel, and just not being around the same support systems. And then the last thing that has changed a little bit is, the fear-based parenting, also known as helicopter parenting, which is kind of going down a little bit, but it is there. That feeling of your child you have to be on your child, that any mistakes that they make, any wrong turns is going to create disasters for everybody, themselves and your family, and that you have to be on it all the time. This creates a lot of pressure for you. So these changes in the family structure, who's at work, the cultural shifts of how we should parent, all play into how we take care of ourselves. One thing I didn't mention, and I meant to, is I really, even though this is a webinar and we have a lot of people listening, that's great, but I want you to feel free to write in any questions that you have, anything that you want to kind of think about. I won't be able to get to everything, but please do write them in, and we have Carly is here, and she is kind of moderating, and I will try to get your comments interweaved into this content. So please let us know if you have any thoughts or questions. Okay. So, effects on parenting, on your stress on parenting. We know that self-care is important, but what are the impact when you don't take care of yourself? What's the impact on your parenting? Well, this kind of goes for the workplace too, but you're irritable. I mean, when you're stressed out, you definitely have a lower threshold for frustration. We all do. We just kind of get prickly. We're less patient. We're distracted. With our families, sometimes when we're stressed out, we don't manage our anger. And I say unmanaged anger, I'm a real proponent, and anytime I have the opportunity to say this, I do, which is that anger is not a bad emotion. When it's unmanaged is when it gets scary, and it's something that we don't want to happen. So when unmanaged anger, and that's something like an example of your child drops something, a bowl of spaghetti and meatballs all over the floor, and you absolutely have a fit and you scream at them. Even though you knew it was an accident, it was just you have so no tolerance, you're so stressed out, and it made such a mess. That's unmanaged anger. Now, I will also take this opportunity to say that we all do that. That is not something that is that doesn't happen to even the best of us at times. And when you do have an unmanaged anger experience, you always have the ability to go back to that person, if it's a colleague, if it's a child, if it's a partner, and say, hey, I really kind of lost it there, or I really got mad, and I'm sorry, that wasn't the best me, and I've been really stressed out. So it's going to happen, and you can come back from it. But it does happen more frequently when you are stressed out. Friction between parents, creating a turbulent home environment. We know that when parents are stressed, the kids feel it. Even if you think you're hiding it, there is an energy that happens that kids are really, really good at noticing. They might not say anything, but it is felt. Increase of stress also increases unhealthy coping mechanisms. So those can be from things that you think are not that worrisome to very worrisome, such as alcohol use, drug use, maybe binge watching TV to the point where you're not getting enough sleep, or you're ignoring family members, maybe internet shopping, or even just shopping, or using your credit card in a way that's not being financially responsible. Eating, binge eating is often, an emotional response. And we also know, this seminar comes at a great time. Self-care is really hard during the holidays. And often we get very stressed out when we're supposed to be telling each other what a wonderful holiday season you should have. It's a very difficult time, and these coping mechanisms often increase. Another kind of way that you can see how stress comes into the family is using guilt. We don't realize this, but it's something to be on the lookout for, that as a motivator, you tell your kids, they should be grateful for this dinner, and that's why they should behave at dinner, because you just slaved over this hot meal. It is true, they should be grateful, and they should sit nicely at dinner if that's important to you, but at the same time, that's maybe not how you would go about it if you didn't have too much on your plate. And we often go there when we have too much on our plate. Sharing too much information, causing kids to be stressed. This is something that, again, no one would ever do it intentionally to make a child feel stressed out, but it often happens when you are just, again, kind of overwhelmed. So all of a sudden you are telling your 10-year-old that you're really worried that a bonus isn't going to come through and you don't know how that's going to affect the holidays. That is true, and you are stressed about it. But when you are stressed and you don't have any outlets for that stress, that you're not taking care of yourself, that often can come into conversations when you wish maybe you hadn't, because of the ramifications of sharing that information. Anxiety and depression, if you're wired for anxiety or depression, this stress only elevates the chances of it kind of rearing its ugly head. And last and least, this isn't, to make you feel guilty or stressed out, but we are role modeling for our kids. They do watch us, even though when they pretend they don't, they are watching us like a hawk, and if they see you exhausted, just completely not taking care of yourself and trying to do everything and doing everything but pleasing no one, they see that. And that is not something that I'm going to assume that you would want for your child, to feel like you're doing things but you're not getting anywhere with it. And so just to also be cautious or, cognizant of the modeling that you are sharing when you're stressed out. I'm going to just pause for just a moment just to make sure that there isn't anything that...
We do have a question. It's how do you handle kids who react strongly to going out? What about when their perspective is that you are the only parent who isn't picking them up at school or joining them on a field trip?
So should I repeat the question maybe at the, okay. So it's basically, it's how do you, to summarize this question, is how do you handle disappointment? When your child's disappointed that you're not doing something, and the example that was given, like not being picked up at school like everybody else. So this is the thing. I strongly believe that just like what I was talking about with anger, disappointment is an emotion that we want our kids to be able to handle. If we don't ever teach them how to cope with disappointment, then we are not setting them up to be kind of strong, healthy individuals. But at the same time, I totally get the parental desire to make your child's life a good one and make them happy, and you want to please them. And as a working parent, there is a lot of feelings of not being there when you feel that you should be there, especially if your child's peer group does have parents at home or have more flexible schedules. My big thing is to never get defensive. And this can be applied to lots of situations. But when your child says, you never pick me up from school, everyone picks me up for school, I think when we're stressed out and when we're feeling guilty and we're feeling bad, we say, well, I'm working really hard so that we can go on this vacation, or I'm doing this, and you try to defend why you're not doing something that you would like to do too, but it's not possible. What that does is that closes down conversation. It doesn't allow you to hear what your child is talking about. And so if you can try to think about opening up the conversation by saying, yeah, you're right, I'm not able to do that. Like, does that make you feel like I'm not there for you? And your kid will be like, whatever, depending on their age, or they might talk to you more about it, depending on their personality. But the thing is that you're seeing that their experience, you might not be able to change it, but you're recognizing it. And recognizing someone's experience, especially a parent recognizing a child's experience, is huge. It's even better than picking them up at school sometimes, because they feel seen and heard. And you might say, hey, I can't pick you up from school because my work schedule doesn't allow it, but is there something else I could do? Could we figure out something that I could do outside my work schedule? And they might say, well, can you pick me up from practice sometimes? Like, yeah, I can do that. Or maybe figuring out maybe one day a month or something like that. But at least you're trying to figure out how you can work this together versus defending why you can't do it.
So we have a person that is constantly struggling between balancing work, studying, family time, and me time. And they feel like the me time is always being dropped and that it's the new norm, right? you know, can you give somebody any advice on how to maybe try to balance that?
Yeah. So thank you for that segue. That is a perfect segue to moving on. So what we've done so far, just to summarize, right, is that we've talked about that, you know, that self-care is important. We understand a little bit more about why it's so prevalent and why it's so needed, and why, as that person just said, like the me time gets short-ended a lot. And we also see the effects of when you don't take care of yourself. Next. Symptoms of stress beyond.
It just came up.
Oh, I'm just waiting for the page to go. Okay. So we don't have to spend a lot of time. This is kind of more about the effects, but this is something also that we often, you know, see. And maybe I put these up there because not only that these happen, but to validate some of the times when you're feeling overwhelmed and that this is just you. These are symptoms that I hear about all the time in my office. So physical symptoms, headaches, migraines, digestive problems, big time, frequent colds. Oh, I feel like I'm always sick, or I'm always getting sick. Racing heart, chest pain, dizziness. I say those with a little bit of a caveat that sometimes, you know, never to ignore symptoms, but that those are also sometimes happen when feeling overwhelmed and stressed out. Cognitive symptoms, racing thoughts, and I will also bring in obsessive thoughts here. You don't have to have OCD, a term that we throw around a little too easily these days, to have thoughts that keep on reoccurring that you kind of can't reassure yourself about. You know that they are irrational, or maybe that there's no point in thinking them, but you still can't stop yourself from thinking them. These are really, you know, something that stress really intensifies, and they really do cause a lot of distress. And so I don't want to, I kind of want to just underline that obsessive thoughts are something that a lot of people deal with. Memory problems, difficulty concentrating, focusing. Emotional symptoms, constant worrying, irritability, all the other ones, feeling agitated, what we talked about. And then behavior, right? What we talked about before too, sleep, eating habits, procrastination. But I will also bring in this one, avoiding social interactions. So a lot of times when we get overwhelmed, what we do is we shut down, and that means that we kind of stop doing anything, and we kind of go into isolation mode. And we know human nature, isolation mode is never really a great place to be, especially when you're hoping that that will take away the stress. And in my experience, it sometimes only makes it worse. So as parents, it's not selfish to take care of ourselves emotionally or physically. It's strategic. So I guess I put this in here to give you permission to say that this isn't just like a warm, fuzzy idea that is something that's good. This is really important. This is about, right, that the cliche of parenting is not a sprint, it's a marathon. This is about how are you going to run this marathon and how are you going to do it. And you could limp all the way through the marathon, which wouldn't feel good, or you could be a little bit more strategic, and that means taking care of yourself along the way. Okay, so in your invite came a worksheet, and you don't necessarily need to use it. I just put it out there to help kind of organize your thoughts. But what I want to do, because I want the seminar to be not only informational, but also kind of give you some tools, is I want you to take some time, maybe just a minute or two, really, and this is something also you can choose to do on your own, but without censoring yourself, can you list your top 5 needs? So a need could be exercise, a need could be better sleep, a need could be socializing, a need could be attending a religious event, a need could be some family time. So just take a moment without, you can also put in some wants there, right? So I want to get your nails done. I want to play basketball. So just take a little time, use a worksheet if you'd like, and write down your top 5 wants or needs. So, if some people want to just, let us know any needs that they came up with, just so that we can get if anyone wants to share, no one has to at all, but if anyone wants to write in a couple of them that came up for them. Or not. No, there's no need. I want to say that needs are personal, right? And there's no need. And in a way, I'm kind of glad that if you don't want to share, because then that means that they're really unique to you, versus if they're generic. We're getting some though. Excellent, thank you.
Reading.
Reading.
Is a need.
That's a great one.
Quiet alone time.
Quiet
in the house.
That is such a good distinction.
Weight loss.
Weight loss, yeah.
Travel with family.
Travel with family.
Date with spouse without kids.
Mm-hmm.
Time without kids. Private time with my spouse. Sleep, exercise, good food, massage. That's friends, family, and coffee time.
Sounds all good.
Backpacking.
We've got some really interesting people. These are great, and I want to make a note about the time by yourself comment, which I will also maybe include reading in there. These are the first things that fall by the wayside, because especially as working parents, we feel that when we're home, we need to be on. That since we're not home during the day, or we're not home, for all of our kids' moments, that we need to be 100% there. And that is something that is really kind of unrealistic, that you need time to just do what you want to do in your own home, even though you are a working parent, part-time or full-time. And to giving yourself that, saying, I want my time in the house, is such an important kind of self-care thing that I think often doesn't get done by working parents. So, now let's look at the second part. These needs, being realistic. What are your obstacles in terms of, and there might be many, but what are some of your obstacles to getting this? So, for instance, if I said I want to eat, healthy meals that will help with my health and exercise and weight loss goals, what are the obstacles for that happening? I know personally for me, that would mean that I'd have to go to the supermarket. Well, no, first I'd have to figure out recipes and plan for that. Make up a shopping list, get to the grocery store, then make the time to prep the food, then have enough time to cook the food. We say these things like, oh yeah, I want to eat well, but when we look into them, it's a lot easier than said than done. So list some of your obstacles, and if any of you want to share those, that would be great for the group too. You want to start reading them out if any of them come?
Mm-hmm. Some of the obstacles are guilt, overloaded schedules, work in a globally distributed team, no free time, I need to stop making excuses,
So a couple of them are I would say are not so nice to yourself. Just to notice that some of the self-talk is that is that it's your fault, and I wouldn't go so much there. I think that we're kind of set up sometimes that we are trying to do everything, and so it's sometimes not about excuses or that this is because you can't do it, but it's often because how things are set up in your life. And what can you change to help with that and support you? So moving on to kind of talking about, you know, you've come up with some of your needs, you've come up with some of the obstacles, and so now I want to kind of focus on what are the different ways, what are the different types of self-care you can do to reach, right, some of your kind of goals and also deal with your obstacles. So on the next slide, we're looking at different types of how you can take care of yourself physically. This is by no means the only ways. This is actually just kind of to help you brainstorm. But setting time aside for healthy meals, and that means not just 45 minutes, you know, to make this meal, but meal planning. If you're not a planner, I think this is one of the most difficult things, because if that is not something that's in your DNA, that is very hard to do. But that's important to recognize that that's not who you are. And then what does that mean? Maybe that is doing those meal delivery systems. Maybe it is joining some of these blogs that help with meal planning. If you are a meal planner, that's awesome, because you can really do this and take this on, and so that you can feel less overwhelmed by meals for the week. Another way of self-care is getting exercise, whatever that means. We do know, research shows us in all different ways how exercise is so important to our mental health. And really, really, especially during this time of year when things are in parts of the country, but that the day is shorter and the weather is not as ideal. Receiving regular preventive medical care. This is also my soapbox here, where that as parents, we're all about our kids, and we don't often get the care that we need and we deserve. And I will bring back the idea of the oxygen tank on the plane, that you have to take care of yourself first to take care of others. And you have to put that mask on. And so if you're not taking care of yourself physically, you're not going to be able to take care of your kids, period. Sleep. We all know that sleep is the newest, most needed thing, and that's when you have a lack of sleep, it makes everything worse, really. It creates worse physical problems. It hurts your immune system. It hurts your metabolism. Sleep is really important. And if you're not getting the sleep you need to understand how you can take care of yourself that way, if that means getting an evaluation for sleep apnea, if that means, having a different sleep routine, and also recognizing how our phones come into our sleep routines is really important. Downtime, getting your own time is another type of self-care that you can do, and then spending time outdoors in fresh air and natural light. So taking just a minute, but you could pick one of these or write your own, right, to what is going to be one of your types of self-care to get you to fulfilling one of your needs. And I would say after the seminar is done, look at this for each of the needs that you wrote down, and really think about looking at the obstacles and then looking at your need and what do you have to do? What is the self-care that you need to do to take care of that physically? Is there anyone who has any questions with that, or wants to share what they're thinking, or wants me to talk any bit more about any of the topics I've just brought up?
What about natural light alternatives?
Natural light, I mean, look, seasonal affective disorder, which is also known as SAD, is a real disorder. It is that people who are very affected by the lack of light and their mood changes. This is something that a lot of insurances will cover. There is a recognized thing that can be treated. And there are those natural lights that a lot of people use with great success. So that is something that if you know that you are very sensitive to this time of year, that is something that you don't have to struggle with alone, and that you could go see your internist and see what you would have to do to at least experiment with that. And I definitely support that.
This person says, I have a very long commute every day, and I have found that utilizing books on CD has helped a lot with dealing with the stress of the commute.
Absolutely. Books on CD and also podcasts. So podcasts and books on CD are excellent. And they don't even have to, a lot of people use them for the commute, and they're perfect for that. They're also perfect to be used during exercise. If you're not someone who likes to exercise, it might feel better to get on a treadmill or to go walk around the block while you're listening to a very, intriguing podcast or book than it is just to do it alone. It's also sometimes fun to listen to these things while you're making dinner. That it doesn't have to be when you're stuck someplace, but it can also be when you're doing something. So that is a great stress reliever and a great way for some me time. So let's move on to emotional, because I want to leave time for some questions. So here are different ways to take care of yourself emotionally. So expressing emotions. So sometimes we feel that if we just bottle them up or if we put them on the side, they'll go away. Self-care often means sometimes meaning that emotions have to be looked at. So if you're sad about something, if you're angry about something, if you have regret about something, talking to a family member, a friend, someone you trust. Sometimes it might be a professional therapist because you want that confidentiality and you want that kind of objective viewpoint. This is very important and very helpful in taking care of yourself. And this is a big one in terms of self-care, taking care of yourself financially. So a lot of times when we have financial burden, we are so stressed about it. And what I've found is that sometimes we're so scared of looking at it because we don't want to know, but that it actually then that anxiety gets that much more. And so self-care could mean emotionally is by looking at something that gives you a lot of anxiety, like financial stuff. Doing favorite hobbies that you dropped since becoming a parent. Maybe you love to knit and you haven't knit for a long time because who has the time? Maybe your hands have been very full with babies or toddlers, but could you pick up a hobby that you'd like to do? This is a way of doing self-care, disappointing people. And that, I know that sounds kind of funny, but if you have people who ask of you all the time, sometimes taking care of yourself is saying no and putting some boundaries up. And especially, again, this time of year, you might be asked to go to a lot of things that are nice. They're fun, they're nice, they're special, but you have to say no because you know yourself and you know your family and you know how much bandwidth you have. And that doesn't make you any less of a person. It just means being realistic and taking care of yourself and knowing what you need. Accepting your body and not buying into the message that you need to be fixed. That is one that I think everyone feels one way or the other. We have a lot of messages sent us about what we should be doing and how we should be seeing our body. And can you practice self-care by taking care of your body, by getting physicals and routines and checking up on things that don't seem right, but also, right, being kind to yourself about how you self-talk to yourself. This is a big one. This is a self-care technique of choosing a life that feels good over one that looks good. Sometimes we go for the looking good one. We're all guilty of it, but to really make sure that it also feels good is important. And again, knowing your limits, saying no to extra responsibilities. So looking at your needs, again, pick one. Pick one of these or a different one of how you're going to take self-care, what you're going to do emotionally to take care of yourself in getting one of your needs met.
So if you already feel like you don't have enough time, how do you justify to yourself setting a time aside for yourself? Like, how do you make that a priority? Because saying that you're going to do it doesn't actually get you to do it.
Right.
And how do you get over that first hurdle?
So I will say, this is how I think of it. Like, we, as a culture or society, we very much respect physical needs. So if you had, I'm trying to think of something. If you had pneumonia, right? And your doctor said you need to do these things to make sure you get better, you have no problem going to your boss, going to your family members and said, I have pneumonia, right? And I need to do this. And they would say, you need to do what you need to take care of yourself. We would all be very respectful. Now, instead of pneumonia, let's say I'm feeling very overwhelmed and I'm exhausted and I'm really stressed out. Would we feel comfortable saying that to our boss and saying, I need to actually take this afternoon off, or I need this day off, or I need to actually be able to do this or that, not on a regular basis, but with some thought, like this is what I need? Or could you go to a family member and say, hey, I need you to pick up these responsibilities because I need this. It's us putting respect for our needs, making it a priority, and then other people follow. Right? And it's very hard. I'm not going to pretend that that I wouldn't have some feelings about going to my boss and saying, I'm really stressed out, I need some time. You might not want to say stressed out, but you might say, hey, I have a lot of things on my plate right now, and I've thought about it, and I really would like to take this day off. That is taking care of yourself. You don't need to explain it to anybody, but if you would do it for pneumonia, which really, right, there's a lot of implications if you don't treat pneumonia. What I'm trying to say here, there's a lot of implications if you stop taking care of yourself with emotions as well. So if that's helpful, it's giving you permission to elevate me time to just as any other physical need. Any other questions coming up, or should we?
Go ahead.
So just a quick no-cost stress relievers. I think that these are, I'm putting these in, there's lots of them out there, but these are kind of ones that I like. 3-minute meditations, it doesn't even have to be 3 minutes, so 1-minute meditations. But I find 1-minute meditations, and there's lots of apps for these that really can, you can figure out which ones you like. But taking a minute, and 3 minutes might be asking a lot, but taking a minute at least before you walk in your front door, before you go to work, it does so much. And it might sound a little bit of eye-rolling of really, but taking that minute and just collecting your thoughts, feeling your feet on the ground, relaxing your shoulders, makes a huge difference. And what it does is that it signals to the brain that everything is calm. This is a very important thing that we can go back to at any point, but it's very powerful. Making use of your alone time. Just notice that when you do get alone time, are you on your phone? We all do it. We're scrolling through the news, different social media things. Is it relaxing? And maybe it is. And if it is, awesome. There's no judgment there. But for many people, it only kind of creates more stress. And so is that really how you want to spend your time alone? A lot of times I find that we don't reach out to friends or relatives because we don't have a lot of time to talk. And so therefore we feel like we shouldn't call them. And I say, if you call up a friend and say, hey, I've been thinking about, I only have 10 minutes. I just wanted to say hi. That connection really is so powerful. And we feel like, oh, we're not giving them our attention, or I can't have a long conversation. But it really is a stress reliever to connect with someone that you care about. And it's not about quantity of time, it's about quality. Begin the week and make a promise to yourself to do one thing on your needs list and figure out when you'll do it. So don't just say, I'm going to sleep better. Say, this week, I'm going to sleep better because I'm not going to keep watching TV until 2 a.m. Or I'm not going to, like, browse the internet until whatever time. Make a plan. Make a plan, and don't make it big. It doesn't have to be this, like, spectacular. A lot of times I ask people to do this, and they're like, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times, and I'm going to make amazing meals. I'm like, whoa, way too much. Not only is it not achievable, it's not sustainable, and then you feel like you have failed yourself. So make a small goal, because there's a lot of satisfaction of doing what you said you were going to do. Park further away from your office, or get off at stop early and enjoy some outside time, and then stay present, right? Try to, when your mind is racing, try to stay where you are. It is a huge stress reliever to kind of stay where what you have right now and not what was in the past or what is in the future. So what now? So I want you to ask yourself that next time you purposely do self-care, ask yourself if you're doing it to enjoy yourself or to escape, right? If you're practicing self-care to escape, it's up to you to look at your parenting or job experience and see what needs to shift so you don't have to run away. That this self-care is about how to enjoy your day-to-day, not about how in terms to make it through. And last but not least, setting your own expectations, right? This is, what are your expectations for yourself? That acknowledge and know that you have the power. You have the ability to change how you react to stress. You have the ability to prioritize yourself. You have the ability to change your structure of your day so that maybe you're getting up earlier, or you're going to sleep earlier, or you're getting up later, whatever it is to help you do. You have that power. But there is no doing it exactly right in parenting. There is no one way. It would be so much easier if there was, because then we would all know how to do it and there wouldn't be all this like worry about it, but there isn't. So go easy on yourself with that. Not every moment counts with your kids. I say this because we feel so much pressure to always be doing it right and doing it perfectly. And the most important thing is that your kids feel loved and heard and seen. That is the number one. And your relationship with them is what counts more than anything else. Be nice and gentle with yourself, with your family, with your kids. That means look at your expectations for yourself, look at how your self-talk, how you treat yourself, how you treat your family members, and your goals. And can you be kind? You always want to teach your kids kindness. Can you be kind to yourself? Curtail what makes you insecure, hanging out with toxic people, social media, parenting books, family members. Maybe, part of self-care could just be kind of taking yourself away from those things that you know don't help you. And last but not least in this presentation, seek out help when this feels more than your usual. And that when you are dealing with depression or anxiety or any other type of mental disorder or any thing that is causing you to really struggle to get through the day, that is when it's time to reach out to make sure that you don't need more help, and that because no one should be struggling on their own, and no one's supposed to do this all alone. So I didn't leave much time. So I left 5 minutes, and I also left on the, and maybe this could help structure the last 5 minutes. On the end of the worksheet, you will see that I said, what are top 3 things that you took from this presentation? I'm open to hearing the good, the bad, the in-between. So please, if you want to share some things that you found were valuable, Um, and of course, if there's any questions or anything that you want me to, to elaborate on in the few minutes we have.
This is Maureen. One of the things about our environment is we're a global company. We might be like the ones in the office here based on the East Coast, but we're working with West Coast people in Asia, Europe, et cetera. So I think some folks that are working in a company like this feel maybe some extra stress in terms of how do you manage the family life, and perhaps the work demands are outside maybe of the normal work time. Perhaps because of this global nature of our business. So this could be a little specific to a technology company, a global company like us. Is this something you've run across?
Well, I think what everyone's talking about is it like conference calls at all different time zones? One is in different parts of the country. That is stressful. I mean, that is a very stressful thing, and that happens once in a while. Everyone navigates it, but when it becomes kind of the normal way of doing business, that can take a toll. And so I guess the thing is, and I can say this very easily as a consultant here and not being part of the culture, but is that when it becomes the norm, that has to be understood that that is your norm. And so then what has to shift, right? That you can't, to me, I put that into that you can't do it all. You can't be expected to, if you're going to be working on, somewhere in North America and dealing with China all the time and being on their time zone at all times, then something has to shift in your workspace. You can't do that and be expected to also be doing everything. So that needs to be brought up to your manager's attention when it gets to be too much. And I think that is also a form of self-care. I think it's an excellent thing to point out that self-care often means saying to someone, hey, I say that this is getting to be too much. And that is often worried that that means that you'll be seen as not good enough or weak. And I actually think that it's the opposite. As a parent, when we kind of raise our hand and say we need help, if that's from family members or family or religious institutions, that to me is a strength, because you are saying, you know what, I want to do a good job, and I'm not going to be able to do a good job if I keep on offering that way. And to me, that's much better than having that person keep on doing it and run themselves into the ground and actually leave or be so angry. So it is self-care, and it is so important. Again, this is your career, so this is about how you want to spend your career, and you don't want to just get through it. You want to be able to enjoy it and really excel at it.
I think I'm not really sure, so I'm going to kind of formulate this question for what I'm saying. But somebody is saying that what they're taking away from the seminar is that they feel like they should be spending all their time with their kids, but that it is okay to take some time away for themselves.
Oh, well, I mean, if that's what they heard, that's not what I meant. I think that my message, I guess I want you to take away, is that you spend the time that it's, again, quality over quantity. That there is no amount of time that is the right time to spend. A child spending time with a very stressed out, not present, parent who's always on their phone or laptop is not any better, right? And you could say it was worse than a parent spending an hour, being present. So I'm just saying that I want you to be able to enjoy the time that you spend both in parenting and at work, and whatever that means, and in terms of time, but how do you take care of yourself so that you are able to spend that time that you do spend is quality? So that is it. And I, again, first of all, want to give you a round of applause for making time. This is self-care by just taking the seminar. So congratulations on your first step of making some changes, and that's awesome. If you have any further questions that you would like to hear my thoughts about, you can contact Carly Rosenthal, and she can get them to me. And it's been a pleasure being with you guys here today. Thank you.